I know I'm a couple of days late in saying this, but Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you had a splendid holiday. I myself, I was just really happy to get a couple of days off from work. I drank a lot of eggnog. I ate a ton of just delicious food items that my awesome housemate made for all of us, including some amazing prime rib roast, and it made me a pretty happy character, I'm not gonna lie.
Please, sir, I want some more.
I'm going to be talking about 12 new Blu-rays that I picked up. I purchased these at various locations, some at a local used movie store, others at stores like Barnes & Noble or Target, and I got a couple of new titles in here, which I'm excited to talk about as well. But let me just say real quick that there's one title in here that I wasn't sure if I wanted to spend the $25 on, but I'm really curious, and I'll get to it here in a minute, but yeah, most of these Blu-rays, these are ones that I've been wanting to pick up for a long time, and I'm finally glad that I was able to add them to my collection. Santa was very nice to me this year. Apparently, I was a nice boy, even though I know that's not the case. But yes, I got a few of these Blu-rays from Santa as well, and I'm here to talk about them. So let's start the 7th Blu-ray update with the Arrow release of Alice, Sweet Alice. I'm really glad that I actually was able to pick this up because Alice, Sweet Alice is an incredibly underrated 70s slasher. After watching it, I thought to myself, man, this should be like in the same league as something like Halloween, Black Christmas. Like, this is a very suspenseful, skillfully made slasher film that owes a lot of debt to Alfred Hitchcock. Apparently the director was heavily inspired by Hitchcock, and you can definitely tell because there are some very tense moments in this film. And Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields, this was, I believe, her very first film. I might be wrong about that, but, you know, it also has an intriguing mystery. You know, you're wondering the entire film who the actual killer is, and just the look of the killer. It's like that clear, you know, face mask that you can actually get at Halloween stores. And yeah, Alice, Sweet Alice. I'm so glad they put this on Blu-ray because originally it was on a kind of a subpar DVD release, and the video quality wasn't that great. Probably the newest film I have in this pile is the 2021 reboot/sequel of Candyman. This is a film that we reviewed on this channel, and you know, this was co-written by Jordan Peele, so I knew that it would have some social commentary in here, and it does. It talks a lot about gentrification. It talks a lot about how, you know, privileged individuals will often take advantage of the less fortunate, and also, okay, I mean, this film has been out for a few months now, so I shouldn't be too worried about spoilers. I was hoping Tony Todd would have a slightly bigger presence in this movie. It was nice to see him for a few seconds at the end, but I was kind of hoping he would have an overall bigger presence. My favorite kill scene in this movie is probably the one at the art gallery. You know, you have those two fucktwats, you know, about to, you know, have sex at this art gallery, and they're attacked by this invisible force, and they're killed in very graphic ways. There's some incredibly just atmospheric kill scenes in this movie. Another great one is the extreme wide shot of the apartment window. You know, you see this woman just, you know, getting pulverized, but you're seeing it all from the outside. That was a terrific shot. And, you know, Candyman, I think it's one of those horror franchises that can adapt to, you know, current, you know, things going on in the world, if that makes sense, because this film was very relevant and I enjoyed it quite a bit. A film that I didn't enjoy very much, but I wanted to pick it up because I am a completionist, is The Conjuring 3. The Devil Made Me Do It. I almost said the devil is a part-timer for all of you anime fans. Okay, we reviewed this, and it's, you know, looking back, it's not as awful as I remember. I mean, I saw worse horror films this year. I saw Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. I hated that film. That film was just garbage. But I don't know, just compared to the first two films, it wasn't as skillfully directed, and I thought the scares were kind of lame, and the director is no James Wan. You know, he doesn't have that, you know, visual flair that James Wan has. By the way, Malignant, James Wan did release a horror movie this year, Malignant, and I would say check it out because it's very bizarre, but it's worth at least one viewing in my opinion. The Conjuring 3 was probably average at best. Okay, this one I actually just picked up today at a local used movie store called Zia Records. Stephen King's The Dead Zone. This was released by Scream Factory. Scream Factory treats us horror fans with respect because The Dead Zone is one of the better Stephen King movies. And there's a lot of political commentary in here. Christopher Walken plays this average Joe who obtains psychic powers. There's actually a really funny South Park episode that makes fun of the Dead Zone, where Cartman gets psychic powers by falling off of a building. But anyway, the Dead Zone it's not necessarily horror, although there are some very unsettling scenes, but Christopher Walken, he can see a person's future just by touching them, and Martin Sheen is this sleazy politician who's running for president, and it turns out that Martin Sheen will eventually be the cause of World War III. So, yeah, definitely some interesting political commentary in here. Like I said, one of the best Stephen King adaptations, and it was very, very well made by David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg, as I'm sure many of you are aware, has a passion for body horror. And in this film, there are some very graphic. I'm making up my own language. There are some very graphic kills. One involving a pair of scissors, and that's all I'm gonna say. Don't Breathe. Much better than Don't Breathe 2. Don't Breathe it was one of the better films to come out of 2016, at least one of the better horror films, and it has a very intriguing premise. These young kids, break into this old man's house because they think they'll be able to rob him with no problem because he's blind and supposedly frail, but that turns out not to be the case because Stephen Lang in this movie is a bona fide badass. He goes full Liam Neeson on their asses. He just beats the shit out of them. His home is essentially a version of Home Alone. He has like some booby traps, and this film is full of twists and turns, and you root for Stephen Lang at first, but then you find out that he's kind of a cruel monster, which the freaking sequel really, in my opinion, ruined Stephen Lang's character. They tried to make him more sympathetic, and it wasn't needed. Stephen Lang in this movie is a monster. They should have kept him as a freaking monster. Okay, From Dusk Till Dawn. This is actually a 4-film collection. I could not find From Dusk Till Dawn, by itself. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but I picked this up for about $12. From Dusk Till Dawn is a very, very entertaining vampire flick, although for the first half or so, you wouldn't even think that it is a vampire flick. It's much more of a crime thriller. George Clooney and Tarantino play these bank robbers who kidnap some, regular people, one of them being Harvey Keitel, and they end up shacked inside this disgusting bar in Mexico where they meet up with, actual real-life vampires, including Salma Hayek. Salma Hayek in this movie. I don't really have a foot fetish, but damn. Salma Hayek in this movie may have given me a little bit of a foot fetish. Just erase that from your minds. Just ignore what I just said. From Dusk Till Dawn, it was written by Tarantino, I believe. Yes, a screenplay by Quentin Tarantino, directed by Robert Rodriguez, who has a new show coming out, The Book of Boba Fett, which is a spin-off of The Mandalorian. Looking forward to that. Okay, this is the film that I mentioned earlier, Krampus, The Naughty Cut. So, like I said, I wasn't sure if I wanted to pick this up. It was like $25 to $30, but I read some reviews, and apparently Krampus the Naughty Cut is worth it. Apparently it does contain some additional violent sequences, and it does contain some more swearing, but from what I read at least, it also enhances some of the characters. Like, more depth is given to some of the characters in this movie, so that's ultimately why I wanted to pick it up. I don't have a 4K Ultra HD player, but I do have a Blu-ray player. I haven't watched this yet, but I'm not sure if it also contains the theatrical cut. I don't believe it does, but it does say that it's unrated, so hopefully it'll be worth it. I was totally fine with the original film being PG-13. I didn't really have a problem with it. I didn't need it to be gory or horrifically violent or anything, so yeah. This might be worth a few shits and giggles. Okay, Wes Craven's The Last House on the Left. This is another Arrow release. Arrow does a really terrific job with these movies. I mean, The Last House on the Left, it's interesting. I just watched a movie this year called Censor. Censor is essentially about... It takes place in the 80s during the Video Nasties era. Britain was heavily censoring a number of horror films because they were too violent. And apparently there was a list of, I believe, 72 films that were considered too violent for Britain, one of them being The Last House on the Left. I mean, now it's considered a horror classic. It's about these, girls who are, kidnapped by these, depraved lowlifes, and they end up getting raped in the woods. And one of the girls, her parents, her parents want to take revenge on the people who brutally murdered their daughter, and they essentially become even more despicable and sinister than, the lowlifes. It's honestly not one of Wes Craven's better films, at least not in my opinion, but it does have an interesting twist. When the parents start acting, cruel and, sinister, it's unnerving to watch because they come off as so refined and delicate at the beginning of the film. So, Last House on the Left, I can see why it got the attention of Hollywood. Wes Craven would go on to make much better horror films like A Nightmare on Elm Street and Shocker. Yes, I dig the hell out of Shocker. That movie is bananas, but I enjoy it. What are you gonna do? Okay, getting down to the last 4 titles. Leprechaun, the 7 film collection. Warwick Davis, I haven't seen him in person, but he just seems like the sweetest guy, and I've seen the first 2 Leprechaun movies. I mean, they are incredibly cheesy, and they are pretty awful, but Warwick Davis is such a likable presence as a Leprechaun. He's kind of a ripoff of Chucky the Killer Doll. He's this smaller killer who cracks wise. He makes all of these bad jokes, and he says all these bad puns. I don't know if I'm going to get around to watching any of the other films in this series, particularly Leprechaun in the Hood, starring Ice-T, of all people. That's hilarious, but also amazing. Maybe I will. I kind of enjoyed the first 2. They were bad, but I like them. I mean, what can I say? I own Leprechaun on Blu-ray. I mean, you think I'm going to own something that I don't like? I mean, come on. Night of the Comet. I actually just read an interesting article about this movie. Night of the Comet is one of those 80s films that kind of flew under the radar, but it's about this comet that, buzzes past Earth, and essentially it kills off most of the population, and it turns some of the remaining residents into zombies. These 2 girls end up surviving, surviving the comet, and it's not a really depressing film. It's apocalyptic, but it's not depressing. The 2 girls, they get into a ton of shenanigans. They raid a shopping mall because, this film makes you wonder, what you would do, during an actual apocalypse. What would the first thing you would do, if there wasn't any people around? I mean, me, myself, I probably would go raid a shopping mall, maybe try on some clothes. They get to do pretty much anything they want, and that's what I like about this film, is because it's apocalyptic, but it's not dour. It's not depressing. It's not sad. The 2 girls in this have a lot of spunk, a lot of personality, and there's a really great sequence involving a zombie policeman on a motorcycle, which is just amazing. It's an amazing concept, and it also has a pretty good soundtrack. So yeah, Night of the Comet, one of the more overlooked horror films from the 80s, and it's very tongue-in-cheek. It's kind of like Night of the Living Dead meets Valley Girl. That's how I would describe it. But yeah, definitely check out Night of the Comet. Alright, we're getting down to the last 2 Blu-rays here. Another film from 2021, and probably one of my favorite films of the year, actually, is A Quiet Place Part 2. A Quiet Place Part 2 was also directed by John Krasinski, and it features one of my favorite horror opening sequences in recent years. We get to see what happened when the aliens first invaded the planet. It starts off with John Krasinski and Emily Blunt in their community. They're watching a baseball game. Cillian Murphy is there. He's a friend of John Krasinski's, and we just see something in the sky approaching, and it's a very unsettling scene. Some terrific jump scares, and what I like about this movie is that it's very much about growing up and leaving the nest, because the 2 kids in this movie have to take the initiative. Their mother has to stay behind and watch their baby sibling, so the 2 kids have to go out and find a solution to their problem. And also, it is ultimately an optimistic movie. Again, even though it's an apocalyptic movie, it does contain hope for the future. I mean, this has been out for a few months now, so I mean, if you're worried about spoilers, just skip ahead. But there's a sequence where John Krasinski, I'm sorry, not John Krasinski. There's a sequence where Cillian Murphy and Millicent Simmons, the daughter, they stumble across this small colony of people living on this island, and they're expecting it to be depraved and chaotic, but it's not. It's actually very civilized, and the people there are very welcoming and gentle. So it shows that even in, the most dire of times, people can still be good to each other. That's what I liked about A Quiet Place Part 2. Probably one of the better horror sequels in recent years. Although not better than Sharknado, the second one. I'll give you that. Okay, and last, but certainly not least, I love the freaking hell out of this movie. Stephen King's Sleepwalkers. You bet your ass I own Stephen King's Sleepwalkers. Like I said, I don't own anything that I don't like. This is an atrocious movie. Atrocious with a capital A. This movie is awful. It is also creepy. It contains mother-son incest. It contains a sequence where a mother is having sex with her son, but it's also got some incredibly just over-the-top comedic moments and some really silly moments. I mean, there's a scene where the main character stabs a police officer in the ear with a pencil, and he says to the camera, "Cop kebab!" It's amazing. It's so awful. It's so bizarre. It's so weird. It's one of Stephen King's weirder works. He wrote the screenplay for this movie. It also contains some notable cameos. Mark Hamill is in this movie. Ron Perlman plays a police officer, and yeah, I'm not a cat person. So, yeah, a big shock. Cats, I don't like them. I especially don't like the 2019 musical Cats either, but Sleepwalkers, I guess I would call it one of the most entertaining bad horror films ever made. It's bananas, but I never get tired of watching it. I could watch this numerous times again in the future, and, numerous times again after that. It never gets stale. Also, Clive Barker and Stephen King make appearances in this movie. Alright, horror fan. Those are the new Blu-rays that I purchased recently, or got from Santa Claus himself. Something I'm very proud of, because again, I've been a pretty nice boy this year, I'm not gonna lie. Do you like my shirt, by the way? My sister made it. It's just lovely. Anyway, guys, 2022 is just around the corner. I know I said Merry Christmas earlier in this video. I know I'm a couple days late on that, but life got in the way. I actually got a new job recently, and I've been working a lot of hours, providing for my family. But I hope you have a fantastic new year, and 2022 has some very exciting horror films, ready to be released. We have Scream. We have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, another sequel. We have The Black Phone, starring Ethan Hawke, which looks pretty intriguing. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing those. Thank you so much again for another wonderful year, guys. You guys have been utterly terrific. And as always, have a very scary day, boils and ghouls. And please take care, be good to one another, and stay scary. And if you have any recommendations on what I should buy next, I'll leave them down below in the comments. And subscribe to our channel for more horrific content. Take care, guys. Have a good one.